It's been several weeks since I've posted anything up where I have discussed anything that we're reading or discussing verbally here. I know I've posted several things in writing, and hopefully, in response to some of your assignments, you're seeing different comments that I have made as well. But I wanted to be sure to just point out some things as we go further through the course and consider heritage language instruction. Again, I recognize so much of what we're reading is focused on Spanish as the language, but this week our conversation will be broadening to the consideration of heritage language instruction of other languages, particularly as you get into the third section or third assignment of your reading for this week. In this first article, I wanted to be sure to point out that one of the key researchers that's highlighted here when it refers to Oxford in this article, it's actually referring to Dr. Rebecca Oxford, who was a longtime professor at the University of Alabama and left the University of Alabama somewhere around 2000-2001. She left to go to a university in Maryland. She's actually an Alabama native from what I understand to be the North Alabama area near Huntsville. And as I shared, she's returned to Alabama. She's doing adjunct work with UAB, and she's currently residing in the central Alabama area in Montgomery-Prattville area. But I wanted to really point out her research. She's a renowned researcher in language acquisition, not just English but other languages. And so I wanted you to pay close attention to the strategies that she mentions and give those considerations. Also, in this first article, I wanted you to pay close attention to the scenarios that are outlined, and as we get into the discussion of this week's articles, you may choose to focus on that as an instructional strategy. The second article of this week addresses selecting materials for a heritage language course. Again, the topic is broached around Spanish for Spanish speakers, and for those of you who are reviewing Spanish text, have borrowed text from me, you will find that many of the ones that I have as my collection I created that collection as a result of having information from this article. But you'll also see in this article a listing of the various publishers, more common publishers of language text. In doing some research myself in the last week to week and a half, trying to find information about more textbooks for languages other than Spanish, but also just seeing if there was a greater diversity of text available. I did find that there were some other companies, and you will note, for those of you who've been on textbook committees over the years, that since 2002, some of these companies have merged, combined, broken apart, all sorts of things. So they may not exist as you see them listed in this article. On the second page of the article, you'll see here guidelines for selecting heritage language text, again, particularly broached around the Spanish for native speakers type of course. But I think these guidelines are general enough that you could apply them to any language that you would be teaching. So I want you to consider them and tuck away information from both of these articles as you move into the third component of our assignments for this week, which is the heritage language workshop that's found online. I've posted the link to the NHLRC website in our assignments for the workshop that you are to do this week, but I wanted to make sure to point out the homepage here. As you can see in this video, I apologize that things are scrolling across the page, but this is the heritage language website that UCLA hosts. It's where the Heritage Language Journal is found, and again, there are a variety of resources there. So I wanted to point out the homepage, and I also wanted you to have see directly information related to where the workshop is located. You have the link in the Canvas that you can, so that it will take you directly to this website. You will need to log in. You'll create an account. It's free, just as the Heritage Language Journal subscription was as well. And you will find that the workshop is fairly comprehensive. You'll see it's going to take you back through some information that we've been covering all semester, and you may feel is somewhat redundant. For that, I apologize, but it does help lay the groundwork for some of the later steps or modules in this workshop. As you see here, there are the three modules to the workshop. ranging from understanding learner profiles and definitions to differentiating instruction, and then considering heritage language instruction of languages that we have not yet discussed. I do encourage you, or it is part of the assignment, that you would at least participate and do one of the lessons on one of the languages here. If you have the time and the wherewithal, I would encourage you to complete all 3 lessons of those different languages. To me, this module and these resources really speak to the diversity of heritage language learners and ELLs in our nation, and gives us a landscape, or a point of view of a landscape that's a little bit different than ours. Of course, I understand the Spanish is more prevalent, more common, and that may be the reason why they haven't addressed it here, since there have been initiatives going on in California and in the Southwest for years related to heritage language instruction. But then to see it expanded here, and for us to consider, as these populations grow in our areas, what we may provide or could hope to see provided as well here. I also want to point out about the 3 lessons connected to Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, that the experts are native speakers of those languages. So as you enter those lessons, you'll see that their information and their speeches, their lectures, or their talks on these various topics connected to heritage language instruction of their specific languages are provided in their native language as well as in English. I encourage you to pay close attention to instructional strategies that they point out. For example, and the Japanese researcher specifically speaks to the strategies utilized to teach a speaker of Japanese how to read in Japanese, and the consideration of whether or not we should absolutely go back to the alphabet immediately upon helping someone learn to read a language, or is it more about connecting word form to knowledge of vocabulary. Perhaps it is different because of script systems, but it is something I would like for you to pay attention to as you listen to the experts discuss their areas, and then consider strategies for instruction, since we're discussing differentiation this week. And to kind of conclude our discussion, or my presentation related to this week's conversation, I wanted to share several other resources that I have found, particularly in finalizing the syllabus for this course and considering did I need to update the text or move to different resources. I acquired and looked at some other books, but really felt like the ones we're using and the resources we've used thus far were more appropriate at this point in time. However, I did want to point out these additional resources. The first book here, you'll see the title, is The Education of Language Minority Immigrants in the United States. And just like our text have been for this semester, it's a collection of research articles, and you'll see here that the editors were Terrence Wiley, Jen Suk Lee, and Russell Rumberger. This is information from the back cover. You can tell that I scanned in the front and back cover, and I wanted you just to have some information related to the textbook, and I will share a little bit more here. But this is information from the back cover, including the ISBN information, in case that you were interested in looking into other resources, or if or as you're involved in leadership and making instructional decisions, you need some further information, this would be a great resource to go to. It was published in 2009, and articles in it include a kind of expansion of the economics of the language of immigrants, because I know we've discussed language diversity and the impact as far as college and career readiness, but the opportunities with careers. Also, some assimilation and resistance information research that has been completed. There's an article here about understanding the educational outcomes of students of Mexican origin as you're working to address the instructional needs, and as we look at families from different areas. There's also one of the articles relates to language proficiency and the transitions from high school to community college, which I found very enlightening as we consider college and career readiness. And I know some of you have actually brought up your concerns about, is an ELL effectively prepared to go on to college if they're not fully proficient in English at the time that they graduate. And so it's an interesting consideration here, and I do think it's a conversation that we're needing to look more into in our areas in our state with college and career readiness and the variety of assessments our students are having to take to demonstrate that readiness. So that's one of the text I wanted to point out as an additional resource. Another book that I wanted to bring to your attention or make you aware of is Spanish as a Heritage Language in the United States, The State of the Field. And you'll see there that it's written by Baudry and Fairclough with an afterword by Guadalupe Valdez. Again, I scanned in for this book the copies of the covers front and back. And here the screenshot includes the ISBN information as well. But I encourage you, if you're interested, to pause this video so that you could read the different clips. You'll notice that this particular book is published by Georgetown University Press, and I have found that Georgetown University Press has a wide, well, not a wide variety, but they do tend to have resources more commonly, more readily available, I should say, than some other publishing companies related to language research. This particular book, though, was published in 2012, so it is very recent and very well updated. So it's a good continuation of our original textbook with heritage languages in the U.S. But it is outlined or laid out in a way that it starts with an overview of the field, which goes from to then linguistic perspectives, and then the third and fourth sections deal with learners' perspectives and then pedagogical perspectives. So the articles, again, it is a textbook of research articles. It goes from Spanish heritage language maintenance to the ideologies about heritage language, policy and procedure, planning research. Then in the linguistic perspectives, it deals with grammar perspectives, the pragmatics and discourse. Sorry, that was my alarm. It addresses a conversation with code switching, Spanish, and then goes into Spanish for heritage learners, their attitudes and motivations, and then also addresses advanced biliteracy in those pedagogical perspectives, meeting the needs of heritage language learners, addressing approaches, strategies, and research. And so this is a further discussion and wide variety of different researchers included in the book who've worked in this area. The third book that I wanted to point out is a book entitled Sustaining Linguistic Diversity, Endangered and Minority Languages and Language Varieties. Again, as are the other books, it is a textbook, but a collection of research articles. And so as I look at the information that's included, the conversations range from defining linguistic diversity to documenting it. Actually gets into conversations about languages like Gaelic, Quechua, Guarani, Maori, which are indigenous languages, and revitalizing those. There's a discussion around Brazilian Portuguese, an article on Black Appalachian speakers. Then in developing programs, there are conversations around Scandinavian minority languages, and then language development in other countries around the world. Toward the end of the book, there's a article around heritage language and education in the United States, and several of the articles from writers from the other book are the authors of that article, of that particular article, which are Joy Payton, Maria Carrera, Shusan Wang, and Terrence Wiley, and their article is about a need to reconceptualize and restructure heritage language education in the U.S. This is an image of the back cover. So as I've mentioned, the article's authors, you can see there the list of the names of the various researchers who are included, and then little summaries or reactions to the book. And then to further share the back so that you have the ISBN information, this is the lower section. Again, you'll see this book was published by Georgetown University Press. As I'm finishing this up, an interesting thing that I noticed is that both of the books published from Georgetown would fall into the area of what they consider linguistics. The Spanish one is listed as Spanish language / linguistics. The Sustaining Linguistic Diversity falls under linguistics. And then you would note on the very first book that it would be identified more as bilingual education or bilingualism. So just to consider that right now, heritage language, while we're looking at resources specifically designed for those, that conversation is falling into various fields, not just foreign language with ACTFL, but also with other publishers, and they're categorizing it different ways.